think mysteries can be really hard to do.
The truth is, I hate short story writing.
After chapter 6, I think I already know who the killer is. It was just a whirlwind of a reading experience packed into 30 pages. Hello everyone, welcome to this spooky, creepy reading vlog where we're going to be taking my perspective as a writer and reading through this month's book and short story through that lens. I learned a lot this time about tension and how not to build a mystery this month, so I hope you enjoy. Ooh, I always love when these books have like a unique page layout. To be fair, my copy is actually an advanced reader copy, so maybe that's part of it. Whoa, okay. Ah, Uncle said, putting a hat on and tugging it low. The dead speak to those who listen. Be quieter than even them. Okay. Okay, first off, maybe not the best chapter to be eating and drinking on since we were dissecting a body and had a lot of words like mucus and membrane and talk of the stench. But this first chapter opens with so many questions. One, who's the new mystery man that's waiting on the uncle? What is the relationship between the uncle and the dad like? And then it ends off with one of my favorite tropes where she is to come dressed as a boy to her uncle's class tomorrow. We're getting a lot really quick, and I'm into it. However, we do need a quick location change. So I'm gonna have a little bit of a teaser as I need to host my next live write-in over on Twitch. I still have a little bit of my coffee left. But after this, all I have to do today is read, and I'm so excited about that. This is kind of serving as my weekend. So I was working all day Saturday, so instead, Monday is gonna be my day off with all the reading, and I'm very excited. Especially because this book is our authortube chat book club pick of the 2 months, September and October, for the spooky season, you know? We have Stalking, we have Jack the Ripper, we have a knife on the cover. Already got into all the corpses. Look at that. Look at that. My co-host Jessica Williamson also loves this book, so I'm super excited to just kind of get to chat with her about it. One of the other books we read that she really loved was Truth Witch. That's like She Lives and Breathes by Susan Dittard, you know? So, and I did end up really liking it. It was a fun journey, so I'm excited to see a book that's arguably more potentially up my alley that Jessica already really likes. Might be the perfect fit. And she's actually saying, I didn't love the very beginning because I thought it was gonna be super sciencey, but it really isn't. As the first chapter is entirely about dissecting this body, I can see why that would be a concern. So it's kind of good to know that it might get more into the action, mystery, adventure portion. Let us get to work.
On your mark, get set, 14 minutes, go!
All right, now it is time to read.
Hi pups, I'm coming out with you, yeah. Yeah. Wow, it actually rained today. That's dry. As long as I don't put my book on the chair, this will be okay. Let's see, and I was just on Chapter 2.
For those of you who don't know, Stalking Jack the Ripper's back cover reads, groomed to be the perfect highborn Victorian young lady, Audrey Rose Wadsworth has a decidedly different plan for herself. After the loss of her beloved mother, she is determined to understand the nature of death and its workings. Trading in her embroidery needle for an autopsy scalpel, Audrey secretly apprentices in forensics. She soon gets drawn into the investigation of serial killer Jack the Ripper, but to her horror, the search for clues brings her far closer to her sheltered world than she ever thought possible. Inspired by the infamously unsolved case, this dazzling debut by Kerri Maniscalco weaves an atmospheric tale of beauty and darkness in which a remarkably modern Victorian girl discovers that some buried secrets simply won't stay dead. Okay. This page is an excellent example of how arcs can be weird sometimes. Eggshell. This wayward quotation mark right here that's kind of funky, and then I nodded relived instead of really. But that's just what you get with arcs. Haha. Okay, I lucked out that my library has a copy of this in audiobook form because I actually have some clothes that I need to fold. But I wanted to talk about a few things that I have dog-eared in my physical copy. Yeah. So another thing that I love is that the brother character is actually in on it. Nathaniel clapped his gloved hands together, a sly smile spreading across his face. He couldn't resist assisting me with my chosen medical studies, mostly because my modern stance on why girls were equally capable of having a profession or apprenticeship
offered endless amusement. He, the brother, is actually pretty cool. I like some of his other quotes throughout the novel so far. I mean, we're not that far along. But I also wanted to point out how this opens, like on the very front, with a note on James Patterson's imprint. And this is very recent news, but you know, we just found out that James Patterson's children's imprint is shutting down. So it's just interesting and weirdly timely, I guess, to be reading this book. The book you're holding in your hands represents a lot of firsts. The first acquisition that he's publishing under the new children's imprint, the first young adult novel he chose. It's her first book. Anyways, now I just have to figure out where I'm at in the audiobook. The other thing I will be reading is Bloodchild by Octavia E. Butler. So let's go ahead and figure that out.
Belated birthday stroll around the lake next week. Cross Street. Hanbury? How had I gotten this far over?
Okay, I'm done. I'm on chapter 4, and she's just now like exploring the streets of London. She's out and about, semi-searching for the murderer. It's interesting because this story has a lot of elements I like so far, but I also think it's benefiting from kind of like retellings where you already know the story. So this is like a historical murder mystery, kind of. So you already know a little bit about Jack the Ripper, which means that you're going into it with this knowledge base. So I'm still kind of waiting for certain things to happen. And I think that it's easier to do that in some ways because you don't have to immediately capture the audience's attention with all your other stuff. Whereas other mysteries can't rely on this backstory to help them, so they have to be even more powerful at the beginning. Does that make sense? And it's not just mysteries, again, like all those fairy tale retellings. Just something I'm thinking about. Not that I don't find the story compelling so far, because I'm still excited about it, but the question is, how much is my excitement for what she's done versus what I can expect to come because of the Jack the Ripper stuff? You feel me? Yes. But we are going to switch back to the hard copy ARC edition and hang with the puppies again. Let's go. I'm also still in the middle of The Hero of Ages, and I had started the David Sedaris book yesterday. I love the change in tone between the plotting of like who could have done this murder and then the back and forth between Thomas and Audrey, and then the uncle just having to witness it all. Uncle stared up at the ceiling, rose, sighing heavily. "Back to our murder then," he said, removing his spectacles from a leather satchel and securing them on his face. "What else have either of you got for me besides the promise of a splitting headache?" I always love a little bit of absurdity in my stories. As we'll discuss later in the video, I think switching over to the audiobook, at least for this portion of the novel, might have been a mistake because I actually kind of found it hard to engage. It seemed like a lot of the tropes that I was excited for at the beginning of the book didn't actually pan out in the way I was expecting, though there are positives to come.
Yeah, you're staring out the door? Oh, you are so pretty. Yes, you are.
Well, I have no idea how those are going to turn out as I blended like 4 different recipes together into one, so we'll see. But I'm now on chapter 9. Ooh, I took a screenshot because after chapter 6, I'm pretty sure I know who did it. Excuse? I'm gonna throw my guess out now, so like everything else in my reading vlogs, this is a spoiler. I think it's the brother. Okay, there's only so many characters that we've met, and then the murderer is like somehow tied to her mom's birthday and all this stuff, and then the brother has been getting testier around certain things, and she's like somewhat hiding stuff from him, but not on purpose. She's trying to hide it from her father, so we're meant to think that her father's involved, but actually it's the brother. And those are like the only 2 options we have, by the way. Other than the love interest who is like with her for most of this. I'm sure we're supposed to like suspect him a little bit, but which should be said, I'm actually really enjoying the banter between the love interest and our main character. It's very fun. He's very cocky. It's very like Han Solo and Leia-esque. She's not quite as badass as Leia, but like that's the vibe I'm getting. Do you see something, Buffy? What do you see?
Why has he shown such an interest in your family? If you weren't so taken with him, you'd be more skeptical of his motives. It would behoove you to stay on alert at all times, even with respect to those closest to you.
Are you ready
ready for your appointment, buddy? He's like, no. Yeah, are you ready? No.
I didn't want to stay longer than necessary. This place was overwhelming, and the editor made me nervous.
And the pepperoni's back home. Yes, he is with his sisters. Yay. Yeah.
Hi, sweetheart. Yeah. Duke was getting blood work done as he's an old puppy dog. So we just had to make sure that he was doing as best he can, and he is. So all good things. I did get a lot of listening done since the vet's office is like an hour or so away. Hour and a half. Yeah. No. He a thirsty boy. We are getting close on this puzzle though, so I'm gonna see if I can do any more of this while I finish the chapter. After being pretty sure about who Jack the Ripper was in this instance, there was a part where I became disinterested, and I don't know if it's because of the shift from reading in like paperback form versus listening audio wise, because it just takes longer for the audio to do what you can do usually. Dog, what are you doing? What are you doing, Dad? You just sniffing him? Huh? Hi. Are you being a good sister? Being protective from those other dog smells? Is that it? But now I'm kind of back in it. I'm just interested to see how long it's gonna take. Our main character has basically suspected everyone else, and I get why, you know, the person you grew up with, you wouldn't suspect. So it's interesting for, I think, it almost being purposeful that the reader knows who it is and our main character doesn't. And I think the realization is gonna lead to something pretty powerful. So I'm excited about that. Still love the banter between our love interests. There's been a couple instances where a line has hit me pretty hard and I've been pretty like, oh, that was pretty powerful kind of thing. But without further ado, let's listen and get to the puzzling.
Clues I might unearth. I tapped my fingers on my arms, contemplating her. I didn't hear a sound until our attacker was upon us. A scuffle of boots on cobblestones.
Got some more parts. Okay, so now that I finished this book, I can give it more of a real review. I think the best part about this is the banter and the romance between the two main characters. It also is quite creepy and dark. The way it's narrated oftentimes feels like a younger young adult, which I actually think is really good, because I think that's been, I'm saying missing, even though this came out in like September 2016. I feel like there's not as much there. So the actual narration felt a little bit younger, but then the topics covered were darker, of course, because her brother ends up doing it. Her brother goes slightly crazy. Her brother dies in the end. Like, we talked about like opium addictions and stuff like that. So, and then all the cadavers. So many cadavers, so much blood. Yeah. It's a really interesting balance between feeling both slightly younger and then also being kind of brutal. Another part of this is that Audrey Rose is, you know, stuck in this Victorian age, and she has the, you know, the feminist ideals that we would kind of hold today. And so, because of course it's young adult, that's what it's all about. But this plays repetitively throughout the book. At times I really loved it, and at times I was kind of like over it, or the way it was done, I was kind of over it. Overall, I would say this is very fun. Again, the pacing felt off in parts, but I think it's really hard to do. I think mysteries can be really hard to do. That's what I'll say. Mysteries can be so hard to get the pacing right because you have to continue doing the clues, but also have your main characters leading the charge, which, you know, for the most part, they really were. And a lot of the like mistakes and things they stumble into felt very of the age. Like, this young girl would think that this is the solution. She should dress up as a prostitute and like walk around town and try to be gotten by Jack the Ripper, you know? Like, it all made sense. I actually ended up speeding up the audiobook, and I do think that helped a little bit. Would I continue reading this series? Because I know Jessica really likes this series. If I didn't have a super long TBR already, I would probably continue reading this. As it stands, I might not pick up the next one, but like if I saw it at half price books for like $2, I would buy it in the hopes of eventually reading it. Does that make sense? I also do love the end where we're now set up to go to a school in Romania. The last few pages were quite heartwarming in the way she wraps it up with the dad and is like kind of mending their relationship, but it's clear that it's not altogether mended. You know, there's a promise. There's a lot of promise at the end of the book, which I think does go really well into having a next book in the series, and we've set up a new adventure. I was curious. I thought all of them, when I first saw these covers, would be different main characters, but I now see how she's having the same two, which I think is really fun. Bonus points for there not being any love triangle. Love that. Great. Also, double bonus points was her cousin named Liza. Her cousin ended up being the character that I wanted her brother to be. So her brother ends up being the killer, and actually it's fine, but like, to be a different kind of voice, the cousin stepped up. So I'm excited actually that we're gonna follow these characters because I think that promises that the cousin will come back eventually, so yes. Now what's gonna happen is, in contrast, we're about to read some Octavia E. Butler for the first time. I'm freaking pumped about that. It's gonna be a short story called Bloodchild. I checked this out from the library, didn't read it in time, and then when I tried to place a hold again, it was already taken. So we're gonna buy it. So instead of getting it online, I looked at the prices and it's actually cheaper and in stock at Barnes & Noble. I'm also gonna get us burgers. So that is step one. Get the food, drop the food back off, get the book. And then short story, I'll be able to read it in time for the authortube chat today, and then I will have so many other short stories to read.
And a side order of onion rings.
So it's Bloodchild and Other Stories. And then Bloodchild's the first one, but I do love this preface. The truth is, I hate short story writing. Trying to do it has taught me much more about frustration and despair than I ever wanted to know. Yet there's something seductive about writing short stories. It looks so easy. Octavia Butler already speaking to the soul. So I'm gonna go to the first story, Bloodchild. Let's freaking get into it. Okay, this is a great opening sentence though. My last night of childhood began with a visit home. I love when your brain is already kind of wondering like what the story's gonna be. Ooh, windy, okay. Let's read. Okay, I'm already dog-earing so many pages to come back to because book club's in an hour and 13 minutes. But, some of my favorite things about short stories is how succinct something is said. Even just an entire idea is said within a sentence that I think can sometimes be expanded to be an entire novel if the author so chose, and yet they're able to sum it up. This whole story so far, there's like insect person that watches over the Terran families but also gets to take one of them. It's very interesting. But one of the brothers, no matter what he felt toward the Tlick, he always demanded his share of egg. This entire idea that you can be scared of something or even repulsed by an entirety of a thing and yet still participate in what you like and kind of pick and choose, so you're actually not repulsed by the whole or scared of the whole or whatever. It's just an interesting dynamic that I think could be explored in a longer form, but perfectly said in a sentence. So I will come back to the dog here, but for now, we must go on. Okay, so I pulled this down to a male because I'm guessing now that they're growing inside of him, inside of Lomas. Like that's what it is. The Tlick is growing inside. This short story has me guessing at everything, which is great. Oh, yep, there it is. Tlick from Terran bodies were always larger as well as more numerous. Ooh, or the brother is forced and is just accepting the only good thing about his fate, which are the eggs that he can eat, but not the ones that grow. Anyways, okay. Jeez. All right, that's the end. And now I wait for Jessica. Hello. Okay, so it is now like a week and a half later, maybe more than that.
There's something I always appreciate about the authortube chat when talking with Jessica. Because she loved Stalking Jack the Ripper so much, it gave me a better appreciation for the story as a whole, just to hear how much she loved it. Does that make sense? Like, there's something nice about talking to other readers, even if the book wasn't my personal favorite, to then hear why it was one of their personal favorites. It makes me appreciate it that much more. And it was still a good book. However, Bloodchild? So this is where the comparison is, because I mean, they're not even the same genre. The authors weren't trying to do the same thing. One's a novel versus a short story. And yet the mystery, tension, suspense you kind of feel and is like a big part of both of them, I think was done to much greater effect by Octavia E. Butler. Freaking Bloodchild. I was so, let me see. So I could actually remove this and put it in my red section now of my YA books. But let's talk about Bloodchild for a bit. I just want y'all to see how many things I dog-eared, and I actually want to go back and reread the story because during the chat, Jessica and I both picked up on different things, so it would be really fun. But I want to talk about the afterword. So this is one of those really cool things where figuring out what the author's intent was. So it's much easier to figure out the author's intent, you know, in quotes, I think in books like this and usually more typical genre fiction. And I'm not saying that is a bad thing because I love genre fiction, but it's really cool to have this afterword where Octavia E. Butler both talks about what people thought of the story versus what she was actually intending to do. So like, I'm gonna read it. It amazes me that some people have seen Bloodchild as a story of slavery. It isn't. It's a number of other things though. On one level, it's a love story between two very different beings. On another, it's a coming-of-age story in which a boy must absorb disturbing information and use it to make a decision that will affect the rest of his life. On a third level, Bloodchild is my pregnant man's story. So it goes on. Bloodchild is also an effort to ease an old fear of hers and like all the rest of this, which is very cool. So in Stalking Jack the Ripper, we have a more overt mystery in that we're trying to kind of figure out who Jack the Ripper is and who's doing the killings, and can our main character figure this out before Jack the Ripper gets her or whatever else. But in Bloodchild, you have all of the tension and suspense, which is almost what feels like a mystery, where you, the reader, are scrambling to figure out almost what's happening. Like, and even when I was reading what was happening, I still wasn't entirely sure I got it until the next like couple pages later where it was compounded. So it was just a whirlwind of a reading experience packed into 30 pages, and I loved every second of it. I'm actually, here's what we're gonna do. This is my lovely TBR shelf slash currently reading slash about to talk about in another book club shelf. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put Bloodchild and other stories back on this shelf because I want to read all of the and other stories. But please do comment down below. Let me know if you've read Stalking Jack the Ripper. Let me know if you've read Bloodchild before and what you thought of both of those stories. Let me know what you think about author's intent versus what the reader takes away from things. And at that point, does it matter what the author's intent was? And also let me know if you're writing a book, for the books that you're writing, how do you incorporate the mystery, suspense, tension? Do you think that mystery always plays a part in stories and that the reader obviously doesn't know what's gonna happen? Yeah, and how do you make certain things a surprise? How do you go about layering clues along the way? I'd be curious. But that is gonna be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you especially to some of my new patrons this month. Xana, Heather Flight, Sarah D, Jennifer Ott, The Carrot Cat, Chloe Edwards, James Moore, Zoe, Madison, RJ Shed, Aaron Gower, Fox, Zara V, Danielle R, and Sunny Hyde. And I will see you all very soon in the new video. Bye. Oh, got dizzy. All right, step one. So instead of getting it online, Zelda, shut up. Trading in her embroidery needle for an whoa.